Hey, it's Dougie Wood, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my top 5 SharePoint administration tips. We're going to be looking at how to manage SharePoint storage to avoid hitting storage limitations, and some of the common reasons why storage is commonly hit. We're going to be investigating how version control impacts your storage, and also how you can purchase more storage if required. We're also going to be looking at deleting SharePoint sites and how you can recover them just in case something was accidentally deleted. And we're also going to be talking about controlling user access and things like enabling automatic idle signouts for automatically signing people out when they're no longer using SharePoint. We're going to be discussing that and so much more. So let's dive in and take a look. Do you need help organizing your SharePoint storage? Perhaps you're hitting multiple SharePoint storage issues and you're just trying to wrap your head around what it all means. Well, I'm going to show you where you can find the SharePoint storage quota for your SharePoint tenant and then give you some best practices around SharePoint storage. So navigate to the SharePoint Admin Center. By doing this, you can go to office.com, click on the Admin button from the Admin Center of Microsoft 365, click on the SharePoint Admin button under Admin Centers to take you to the SharePoint Admin Center. From here, you can see that there's a Sites tab on the left-hand side. Select Active Sites. Now this is going to show you all of the active SharePoint sites that you have inside of your SharePoint Admin Center. As well as that, you'll also see across the top right corner the amount of available storage space that you have. Now this is all of your SharePoint sites combined together. It'll give you a usage as well and show you how much of it is currently available. Now this will be different for everybody. Usually though, small to medium-sized organizations typically have somewhere between 1 to 3 terabytes of storage space. Now, this is actually calculated based on the amount of users that you have, because it's the amount of users you have. Each user has a certain amount of storage space available for them for SharePoint, and that combined gives you your total SharePoint storage space. Now, this is essentially, I'll say 1 terabyte, but it could be 2-3 terabytes depending on the size of your organization. That sounds like a lot of storage space, but I can assure you it will easily be hit if you're using a lot of things like videos, large images, things like that, which are going to use up a lot of storage space. Now, I tend to find there's usually 2 main reasons why storage space is being exceeded. One of those is, as I say, you've got a lot of large files on one or more SharePoint sites. So large images, videos, things like that, which are clogging it up. Or it could be that you have a high volume of version history of the documents. Now, the reason why I mention that is because if you imagine you have, say, one particular file in a document library, but on that one file, you have 500 versions of that file, you basically have 500 copies of that one document. So you could see how you could quickly exceed the storage space. Now, to find the kind of offending SharePoint sites which are hitting that storage space, you can use this column here inside of this active sites table and filter, or basically sort by, large to smaller. What this will do is then it'll order the sites by the largest storage space, and this will give you your kind of offending sites. Now, this is just a dummy tenant, so there's not really a lot of storage space being used here, but you could see I could quickly find that this SharePoint site, the bank or the heart, these ones are using the most storage space in my SharePoint admin center. So I could quickly go and find maybe who the primary admin is of that site, contact them and say, what's going on with this SharePoint site? Why is it using up so much storage space? There's other things that we could do as well. We could drill into the site, so I could give myself access. Say if I didn't have access to this site, I could select it, click on the membership and give myself owner access to the site. So I could go into the site and start digging around into the site to start figuring out where the storage space is being used. So I'm just going to click on this site, and I'm going to start digging into it to have a little look at what potentially could be causing any storage issues. Now you can see I don't have access to the SharePoint site already. I need to give myself access. So go back to the site. I'm going to click on memberships, going to click on site owners, and then I click on add site owners. I'm just going to type in the account that I'm using, which is this one, click on add. And now when I go back to that site, it will then allow me into site. So now, previously, this isn't a SharePoint site that this account has used, so that's why I need to drill into it and have a little look at what is going on this site. So if I was to click on the cog and then click on site contents, I can then start having a little look at what actually is inside of this site. So you can see there's a lot of site assets in here. So the number of items is a giveaway of where things might be being stored. So if I look into site assets, I might see there's loads of images in here or videos or things like that, which might need to be cleared up. I'll just go back a step. I can also start digging into some of the other areas like documents and saying, is there any large documents in here? So I click onto documents. I can see what is going on in here. So I can see there's not a huge amount of documents in here, but I could choose if I wanted to add a column into the view to see the file sizes. So I could start getting an idea of how many sort of large files we have in here. That's really easy to do by clicking on the view up here, clicking on edit current view. I can then go to the columns which are in the view of this library, select file size, and then click on OK. And that will then save that view and it'll add the file sizes. So again, I could sort by larger to smaller, and I could see which of these offending documents. So these are much sort of larger files than the ones beneath it. So I could then look into that and think, well, actually, do we need these files? Something else I could look at is the actual versions of these documents. Now, these are PDFs, so there's not going to be versions, but if they're Word documents, there might be a lot of versions of each document. And as I was saying before, that each version of a document classes as a copy of the document, which means you're duplicating this file size however many times you've got versions. So I was to click on the cog again, go to Library Settings, go to More Library Settings. Let's take a little look at the version settings that we have set up. So on version settings, I'm going in here and just checking to see how many we're storing. Now you can see I am actually saving to this document library all of the major versions. There's no time limit on it. And I can see I'm keeping 500 versions of that document. So that 6 megabytes times 500, whatever that works out to be, is the amount of storage space that one file is going to be taking up. So if this was a concern, I could choose to lower this down, maybe say, actually, I'm only going to keep 100 versions. So now I'm only basically storing 100 copies of that document at any given point in time. But of course, this is all just tips for how you can reduce the amount of storage space. So by finding the offending sites, digging into them, looking for large documents, images, videos, or version control, or version history, I should say, that's got completely out of hand. But if you've done all of that and you're still hitting thresholds, you can purchase more SharePoint storage space. Now, there is a full page on the Microsoft Learn site about adding more SharePoint storage to your subscription. So you can go and check that out as well. And it'll give you a bit more information about what to do before you begin viewing your available storage and then also buying the additional extra file storage space add-on for your SharePoint Online Admin Center. If you're enjoying this video, please do subscribe to my channel as it really does help. And I'm going to be showing you how you can set automated SharePoint history version control limits. Now, the reason why you might want to do this is because you might have found actually that you're hitting thresholds of storage capacity on a particular SharePoint site. You might have identified that one particular SharePoint site is using up a lot of storage space and you're needing to control that by reducing the amount of versions on a SharePoint site library. To get to this setting, you're going to need to get to the SharePoint Admin Center. So from office.com, we can click on the admin button here. This is going to take us to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Click on Show All, click on SharePoint, and this is going to take us to the SharePoint Admin Center. Now, again, I should say, the reason why we would probably want to do this is because if we've identified there's a SharePoint site which has got really high SharePoint storage, so it might be, say, for example, under active sites here, we've looked at a SharePoint site and found a particular SharePoint site that's got a lot of storage space. Obviously, this is just a test, so it doesn't have that. And we've identified actually there's documents on there which have got, say, 500 versions for each document, and that's using up all the storage space of this particular SharePoint site and potentially affecting all the storage availability of our total SharePoint sites combined. We might need to start locking that down, and we want to blanket roll out to all SharePoint sites, not just the one, the version control. Now, you can do it just to one specific site if you wanted to. So I'm going to show you that first, and then I'm going to show you how we can automatically apply it to all of the SharePoint sites. So if it was just one SharePoint site, if I go to that SharePoint site, and then I click on the cog across the top right corner once it loads, so I can get to this site contents. So I click on the cog, click on site contents. That's going to show me all the document libraries on this specific site. So if it was just one specific site, which we're having a problem with, we can just enable it on the one site. But again, I'm going to show you how we do it on all sites afterwards. So by clicking on the documents library, or by clicking on three dots here and then clicking on settings, we can then navigate to the document library settings in here and click on version settings. This is where we can then see the version settings for this one document library. So you can see create a version each time I'm editing a file in this document library. So it could be create major versions, or worst case is that it's creating major and minor versions. So it's saving a lot. Then we can see how many of the major versions or the major and minor versions are being saved. So it could be 100, it could be 500, it could be it could be a huge number that we're saving. But to give you a bit of context to this, imagine if you've got one file which is stored in your document library. If you have 100 versions, major versions saved, that whatever the size of that file is, times that by 100, and that's how much storage space that one file is actually using. So that's why we need to make sure that this is quite a low number, and we can change this if we wanted to. So if this was just one library that was affecting us, even if we just change that to 50 major versions, we've now halved the amount of storage space that this document library is going to be using. And then by clicking on OK, that will save that library settings, and it's enabled just for that one document library. But let's go back now into the SharePoint Admin Center. And this time, let's look at how we enable this for all of our SharePoint sites. To do this, we're going to click on the Settings tab on the left-hand side of the SharePoint Admin Center. And then you'll see here we have Version History Limits. So by selecting on that, you can then see we have a few options here. Now, there is a new feature which is automatic. So this is where we can enable automatically optimized storage using an intelligent algorithm to store versions based on creation date. So you can learn more about this. If you want to dig into a little bit more about this and the kind of black magic which is making it work, you can see here, this page will give you all the information you need about sort of version storage behavior, the scenarios, how the version trimming behavior is going to operate, and it's going to give you a lot more information about how all of this comes together. So maybe have a little look through all of this before you enable that. But for a lot of organizations, this is going to save you so much SharePoint administration time, because it's going to automatically calculate using very clever, intelligent algorithms what the version control should be for each individual SharePoint site. So that's how you could automatically set it. We could also put manual. So if we didn't necessarily want to just have something automatically calculating it for us, we wanted to have it very specific, we can set manually, and this means that the versions are deleted when a set number or time limits are exceeded. So you could say number of major versions. So maybe we could say there's 50. Or actually, it's not going to like that. We're going to say 100, and the time. So we delete versions after this period of time. So we could say after a year, let's get rid of those versions. So we're not needing to keep versions of documents for more than a year in this scenario, and we could set it here. Of course, you can make that a little bit more specific. So if it's 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, never, or you could have a custom range as well. So say, for example, if you wanted to make sure things are kept for 2 years, or maybe you've got a lot of financial information, so you've got to keep it for 7 years, you can specify that time limit as well using the version history limits here. But as I say, I would have a little investigate into this automatic limits, have a little play around with that, see if those scenarios are going to fit your requirements, because it will save you a headache. It's going to save you a lot of time having to dig into storage issues and things like that for specific SharePoint sites. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my channel. If you've got any questions at all about setting version history limits, version control inside of SharePoint, or anything else relating to SharePoint or SharePoint Admin Center, drop a comment in the the comments box below. I'm going to show you exactly how you can delete a SharePoint site, and also importantly how you can then recover it if you ever deleted a site by mistake. So there's actually two ways that we can go about deleting a SharePoint site. The first way would be through the SharePoint Admin Center. So that would be through, as an admin, I'm going into the SharePoint Admin Center under Active Sites, finding a site, selecting it, and then clicking on Delete. And that will then delete it and remove it. I'm going to show you that in a moment, but I'm also going to show you the most common way that a SharePoint site is typically deleted, which is by the user themselves. So this falls more under when we're looking at recovering a site, how we can sort of find it if someone else has deleted it via the SharePoint site interface. So I actually just created a little test site just called Delete Me Please. And I'm just going to go to that site by selecting the URL. And what that's going to do is open up my SharePoint site. Now, this is just completely blank. There's nothing on here. It's just a default SharePoint site. But I've created it because I want to show you how typically people end up deleting SharePoint sites, because quite often if you're a SharePoint admin, you're probably deleting them via the admin center, but users will delete it through the SharePoint site itself. So the way to delete it through the SharePoint site is by clicking on the cog and then going to site information and then view all site settings. Now, people might find themselves here in a couple of different ways, and I've seen this being deleted in the past before by accident, because quite often people are deleting SharePoint sites that they don't really understand. So it might be that they're thinking they're deleting either a sub site or a different site. They might think that they're deleting a document library. They can get a little bit confused because these settings pages do all look the same. They're not branded very easily and things like that. So quite often people get confused. Now we're in the site settings area. You can see under site actions, the third link down says delete this site. Now when you hover over it, you will notice it will say permanently remove this site and all contained content. Click to see more information about this operation. So when you click on delete this site, it will then bounce you through to this page. Now, this is now giving you a warning. It's saying you are about to delete the following website. And this is where hopefully if people are kind of paying attention, it is telling you exactly which site it is. But not every SharePoint user is going to really understand the URL of what it is that they're deleting. It's then saying delete the website will send all the content and user information to the site collection recycle bin, including documents and document libraries, lists and list data, website settings and configurations, permission levels, groups that have been created, and sites of this website collection. So basically any subsites or anything that sits underneath it. So say for example, if this had subsites like under delete me please, it had delete me 1, delete me 2, delete me 3. Deleting at this layer will delete all the subsites and anything else, all the content that sits underneath it. The final warning, so to continue, click delete. Important, this action will permanently delete all content and user information, but the hard disk space will not be immediately available. The reason why it's not necessarily going to be immediately available, so say for example, if you were looking to clean up your SharePoint admin center and get some more of that storage space back, it's not going to immediately give you that back until it's completely gone. And we're going to look at how we recover it later and how long we actually have almost like the ability to recover it back for. But until it's completely gone, it's not going to give you that hard disk space back into your total SharePoint storage threshold. When you delete a large site, SharePoint removes data gradually for performance reasons. To perform immediate deletion, you need to run a set of commands using, for example, PowerShell or the object model, find information, see the SharePoint help system. So again, if you're a more advanced user, you're a SharePoint admin, you might be using PowerShell, you might script this to delete it. But as I say, just by deleting this, it's not actually completely gone. We can get it back, and it's not going to be giving us any of the hard disk space back just yet. Then I just need to click on the delete button. So click on delete, and again, it's giving me a final warning saying, are you sure you want to send this website to the site collection and recycle bin? I'm going to click on OK. That's then working on it. It's going to delete my site, and it'll bounce me back to the SharePoint page because obviously that site doesn't exist anymore. So how then do we recover this SharePoint site? So if I go back to the admin center, so I can go to Microsoft 365 homepage, which is office.com, click on the admin button as we were saying before, click on SharePoint to go to the SharePoint Admin Center. This is then going to load up the Admin Center, and we're going to click on Deleted Sites on the left-hand side. This is then going to show us all the deleted sites. Now, it might just take 60 seconds to show up, so I just paused the video there to wait for it to show up. In real life, to be honest, you'll never really find a need to delete a site and get it back within 60 seconds. It will just be here by the time you get here. It's probably going to be a day or so later once you realize that you've made a mistake or someone else has deleted by accident, and it will appear in this deleted sites area. So, as I say, under deleted sites, we then have a list of our deleted sites, which are sites that are retained for 93 days and then permanently deleted. Now, I should say now, and caveat this, once they are deleted from in here, they are gone. They are completely gone. You cannot get them back. Your support desk won't be able to get them back. Your Microsoft partner won't be able to get them back. Dougie Wood, myself, won't be able to get them back. Microsoft will not be able to get them back. So I do advise that you do have a backup and recovery tool in place. So if something was deleted permanently, you could get it back from a third-party backup tool. Now, if I wanted to recover this, all I need to do is click on it and click on the Restore button. Now, you'll notice if I go to this site now, at the moment, it's deleted. It basically will say 404 file not found. It's deleted. It's gone. So any links that are pointing to this SharePoint site at the moment will no longer work. It will just say 404 file not found because that site technically has been deleted and it doesn't exist yet. To restore it, all I need to do is click on to that Restore button once I've selected it, and that will then start processing the restore. As I say, this won't necessarily reappear straight away. You might need to give it a few minutes for it to reappear. But very soon it will be available again. So if I go back into active sites and I was to search for delete me, so it was actually this delete me please, I select it, it's now back. So that site is now fully back. I can completely access it, and the site is back as it was. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my channel. It really helps my channel grow and reach more people. You'll also get more SharePoint admin sort of notifications for tips and tricks on how to administrate SharePoint properly. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can find the owner of a SharePoint site. So there's multiple reasons why you might be looking for the owner of a SharePoint site. It might be because you're wanting to ask them about some specific content, or it might be that you have identified a SharePoint site as having a lot of high storage and you're needing to speak to them about reducing that storage space. So how I would approach this, first off, if I was a SharePoint admin, would be to click on the admin button inside of Microsoft 365. So just by going to office.com, click on admin, which will take you to the admin center of Microsoft 365, click on SharePoint, which will take you to the SharePoint Admin Center, and then we're going to select on Active Sites on the left-hand side. Now, as I say, this might be because we're looking into storage issues of large SharePoint sites, and we're reaching out to people to try and contact them about storage space issues. So let's look at this bank site. Now, the quick win with this would be actually, let's look at the primary admin column, and you can see here, it's got my name, Dougie Wood. Now, that might not necessarily be who the site owner is, or the content owner, should I say. So because, like in this scenario, where I am the primary admin of this SharePoint Admin Center, I've created all these SharePoint sites. And that might be the same for your organization. You might have created all of the SharePoint sites for people, so the primary admin is just your name. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that is going to be the owner of the SharePoint site or the content owner of the SharePoint site that you're wanting to reach out to. It might be that if you work for a very large enterprise organization and you're giving people access to create their own SharePoint sites, you might get lucky and that primary admin might be the person that you want to contact. However, even after you select on that person, you might find that actually they no longer work for the organization. So you need to sort of jump in and dive in a little bit further and do a bit more investigation to find who might be that owner. So next thing I would do is I would go to that SharePoint site. Now, if you don't have access to that SharePoint site, I should say, which I do have access to the SharePoint site, but I've just missed a bit of a step. You would want to select the site, click on membership, and then give yourself site admin access. So selecting site admin and then give yourself the site admin access to the SharePoint site. I would then do a little bit of digging around on the SharePoint site just to sort of see what content is being created and potentially who's uploading things to it. So I would click on the cog, click on site contents, and then within here, I would have a little look at the sort of some of the documents or some of the assets that are being uploaded. So click onto site assets, and I can see all of this is being uploaded. Again, this is just a test, so it's just me. But if this said Joe Blogs that's uploading these images, or if I go back into site contents and just go into documents and take a little look at the documents that are being uploaded into here. Again, if this said Joe Blogs or Jane Smith or something like that, those would obviously be people that I would want to be contacting, reaching out to. You could even filter or sort by, say, for example, the newest possible content. And then in this case, obviously, these are just old documents, but I would find the newest documents and then I could reach out to the people that have been uploading or working on documents recently to get an understanding of the content that's on that site, who potentially is the owner and things like that. The final thing that I would also look at and take into consideration when looking for the site owners and who potentially owns the content of this SharePoint site is the permissions of the SharePoint site. So I can do this in a couple of different ways. If I click on site access, I could drill into looking at who the site owners are, who the site members are, and who the site visitors are. So under site owners, you would hope, and this is like hope in quotation marks, that the people that are in this box are probably the people that should be looking after that SharePoint site. Again, none of these methods are 100% foolproof. I would use them in combination. So all of everything I've shown you so far in terms of looking at who the primary admin is, looking at content of who's creating and modifying content, and also who the site owners are, take that with a pinch of salt and form some conclusions about who is creating content, who's owning the content on that SharePoint site, and that'll give you a much better understanding. You can also access this same information if you are a SharePoint admin under the active sites. You could filter through the membership, see the site admins. I'd say the site admins is the primary admin, which might be the person who created the SharePoint site. But you could then look at site owners, site members, or site visitors, and even a bit about the about permissions area of this. And this will give you an idea as well, as I say, just like looking at through the site interface of who the potential owners are, who the members are that might be adding and contributing content to that particular SharePoint site. You can then easily reach out to them. So you could find that person's name, hovering over them. That will then give you their contact information to either call them or email them or drop them a Teams message to ask them about the content that's on that SharePoint site. So if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions about navigating the SharePoint Admin Center or finding content or people in the SharePoint Admin Center, use a comments feed below to ask me any questions. I'm going to show you how you can automatically set up, using policies, a SharePoint session timeout. Now, there's multiple reasons why you might want to set up a session timeout. Perhaps you're having your users access your SharePoint intranet via a public computer, like via a library, for example, or via a computer at home. Maybe people are using shared devices within inside of your work environment. Whatever the reason is, for security reasons, you want to make sure that people are actually properly signing out of SharePoint, so then other people that maybe are using the same devices aren't accessing that information. Now, the way that we get to setting this feature up is through the SharePoint Admin Center. Again, we can get to this by clicking on the admin button, going to office.com, clicking the admin button, which will take you to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. From there, you're going to want to click on the more or the show all feature on the left-hand side and then select on SharePoint. This is then going to take you to the SharePoint Admin Center, which is where all of the main kind of controls, policies, settings, things like that are set up within inside of your SharePoint environment. What you're then going to do is need to click on the policies tab on the left hand side and select on access control. Now, this gives you a range of different access controls, not just a session sign-outs we're talking about. You can also do things like use unmanaged devices. So this is allowing you to restrict access from devices that aren't compliant or joined to your domain. We're going to also be talking, as I say, about the session sign out, but you can also do things like having network location to allow access only from specific IP addresses. So say, for example, you only wanted people to access your SharePoint site from your office and they can't access it from anywhere else, you can allow access only from specific IP addresses. You can have apps that don't use modern authentication. So this is basically making sure that you can't have any third-party or bespoke apps which aren't using the modern authentication to make sure things are staying as secure as possible. And you also have the OneDrive access restrictions here, which allows you to restrict access to OneDrive content by security groups, meaning you can lock it down so only certain people have access to OneDrive. But what we're interested here is this idle session sign out, which is described as automatically sign out users from inactive browser sessions. So when you select that, you'll notice a little pop-up appears on the right-hand side, which is the idle session sign out settings. This is described as warn and then sign out users or on unmanaged devices after a period of inactivity. This setting applies when users don't select to stay signed in. You can find out more about this, so by clicking on this link here, it will open up a tab and there's more information on the sign out inactive users, which you might want to have a little look through, read through. Basically gives a bit more information about the sign out experience, what it's going to look like to users. So it's going to say you're about to be signed out, and then they can either choose to continue, or if they don't do that, what will happen is they'll automatically see this you're signed out option, and it will give them the ability to sign back in again if, say, for example, they just nipped to the loo or to get a drink or something like that, and they can sign back in again quite easily. But let's jump back into the actual configuration of this. So you can see by default it is turned off. So sign out inactive users automatically is turned off. You need to click on that little slider to turn it into the on setting, and then two additional boxes will appear. You have sign out users after, and this is then specifying your time. So you could say after 15 minutes, after 30 minutes, after 1 hour, 4 hours, 8 hours, 24 hours. So it depends totally on your kind of your requirements, really. Most people, the reason why it defaults to 1 hour is most people would pick an hour. If you're a little bit more kind of security conscious, you might go for, say, 15 minutes as an option. So actually it's time after 15 minutes. And you can also give users basically some notice before signing them out. So again, before that happens, do you want to give them a minute notice, 2 minutes, 5 minutes? Again, depending on how strict you want this to be. But typically most people go with 1 hour and then maybe sort of 5 minutes or so, or 10 minutes before, you might want to give them a little nudge just to say, we're going to sign you out unless you click on the kind of OK button and start using the SharePoint site again. So then all I then need to do to enable this and for this to start working is to basically click on that save button. And that's then applied, that's then enabled. If you ever wanted to turn it off, all you need to do is click on that toggle button, but just make sure that you click on that save button again to make sure that actually the settings are configured. I should also say as well that this will take a little bit of time to kick in. It's not just going to kick in automatically. I would say give it a good, say, 24 hours and it should be enabled, but just give it a chance. A lot of people with these types of settings will enable them and expect them to work straight away. That's not always going to be the case. Give it some time to kick in. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to my channel for more SharePoint Admin Center and administration top tips.